Everyone in Russia lost someone in that war. And to think that Russia's not motivated by that, it's just, again, it reflects on the stupidity.
Vladimir Putin has been threatened by NATO. George H.W. Bush and Jim Baker told President Putin's predecessor, President Gorbachev, NATO will never move 1 inch eastward. It has moved 800 miles eastward. What do you expect Putin to do? How do you expect Putin to feel? How would Joe Biden or Donald Trump or I'm trying to think of two very different presidents react? If the Mexicans entered into a treaty with the Chinese and the Chinese put missiles in Guadalajara aimed at Dallas.
Putin was watching the United States put Aegis missile systems now in Romania and Poland, which are capable of carrying nuclear-tipped warheads. He watched from 2014 on, of every year, the United States, through the European Command based in Stuttgart, Germany, with NATO, which is headquartered in Brussels, they would conduct annual military exercises with Ukraine, including deploying U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. So if you're Russia watching this, as you correctly noted, you can just imagine the kind of panic that would ensue in America if we saw Russia carrying out military exercises in Mexico, conducting joint amphibious landings in Mexico, simulating a landing on the Texas shore. Oh my God, how dare they attack Ukraine when we're creating a very direct threat to Russia in Ukraine?
We spend more than Russia, China, and the next 10 countries combined on defense. It's almost as if Putin, by sitting back, protecting his borders, not giving in, steadfastly maintaining a consistent ideology, is making the United States waste hundreds of billions. Look at the 113 billion in Ukraine. Gone. Not a nickel will come back. But Goldman Sachs will probably rebuild the cities at some point, but nothing's going to come back directly to the American taxpayer.
We have given, in the last 18 months, we've given more money to Ukraine that exceeds the amount that Russia spends on its own national defense budget. The results are not turning out success. And this gets back to all of these generals, these retired generals, are reflecting what's being said by active duty generals, guys who used to be their subordinates, where they're saying the Russian military is brittle. The Russian military is poorly led. The Russian military has lousy morale. The Russian military is poorly supplied. They don't have enough weapons. And it goes, and it's all wrong. It's all wrong. What we've seen particularly over the last 3 to 4 years, is alternative voices to what is considered government policy are squelched. They're not allowed on television, and they've tried to shut them down on the internet, as we've seen with the censorship that's taken place in the past on Twitter, on Facebook, on Google.
A Ukrainian website, a charitable website, was holding some sort of a fundraiser for the military dead, and they inadvertently reported 400,000 Ukrainian military dead, and then the government made them take that number down. Do you think 400,000 is about right, or do you think it's a low ball number?
No, I think it's about right. It's probably a little higher than that, and others in the West are coming into that, agreeing with that decision. So that's a sign already that the West is starting to come to realize Ukraine has lost this. There's no way they can recover, and so they're starting to let the truth filter out more and more each day. They start off as a 40 million person country. They're down to 27 million and shrinking, and a lot of the military age guys have already fled the country. So that's why they're dragooning people that are 50 years of age and my age to come back in. They just had a 71-year-old show up in Germany 2 days ago to be trained on a tank as a tank crew. The Russians still remember World War II. They remember the loss of 27 million of their citizens at the hands of Nazis. They look to the West and they see the United States and the United Kingdom backing neo-Nazis. They see guys wearing swastikas. They see Ukrainian tanks with German images of the kinds of crosses that were on the Wehrmacht vehicles during World War II. Everyone in Russia lost someone in that war. And to think that Russia's not motivated by that, it's just, again, it reflects on the stupidity.
General Hodges, whom I don't know if you know him, he's been on this we can get Crimea rant for a couple of months now. I can't imagine anybody in the Pentagon, much less an American intel, your former colleagues, taking that seriously. Can you?
For Russia, this is a critical existential threat. And they have demonstrated in the past they don't let critical existential threats go easily. And frankly, even if all of NATO came in right now, they wouldn't be able to take it.
Patrick Lancaster, the very courageous, very intellectually honest, independent video journalist who we interviewed earlier today on Ukraine shelling parts of Ukraine and killing children. What I clarified with him is what the audience already knows now. So let me get this straight, Patrick. Ukraine is lobbing shells at Ukrainians in eastern Ukraine, and it doesn't care if it hits children. Answer, yes.
Yeah. Well, in fact, they just killed another child today with another strike on a civilian area. Look, it would be one thing if the Donbass and Luhansk militias and Russian troops were taking refuge in hospitals, in schools, in normal civilian areas in order to create human shields in hopes that Ukrainians wouldn't hit them. But they're not doing that. The ones who have been doing that are actually the Ukrainians. They have been taking over schools and hospitals and churches and using those and then daring the Russians to hit them. And yet, in the course since the Maidan in February of 2014, Ukraine has been involved with consistent military actions directed solely against civilians throughout the Donbass, in both Luhansk and Donetsk. These are children. These are young adults. These are not people carrying weapons. These are not people enabling military operations. And yet, without regard to the human life, the Ukrainian government has been killing them.
Paid for by the American taxpayer.
Yes.